Before you begin, I just want to say a few things, okay? First, you're going to make a mess. That's okay. Cooking can sometimes lead to huge messes, but you're going to clean it up, okay? Boys, I don't want you to leave it for your parents or for a helper or a cleaner or anyone, okay? You're going to make the mess, you're going to clean it, okay? That's important. I want you boys to learn responsibility. If you were in my classroom, I would expect the same from you. If you made the mess, you would clean it up, okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I want you boys to have fun. This is meant to be a fun activity where we combine what we've learned in class, okay? I don't like my classes to just be purely boring information downloaded. And while I'm saying that, I know that some of you are going to follow the instructions and your recipes are going to flop, or something's going to go wrong. You're going to burn the sugar or whatever. That's okay. That doesn't mean you fail, all right? What I want to see is an attempt. So in your video, if your feedback, you go, this is what I tried, it failed. That's okay. That's a part of science. When we do experiments, we test something, and if it fails, we learn from it. Okay. So if it fails and you're able to try again, please try again, okay? But I don't mind if you fail. That's not what it is. You're still going to report back and say, I tried to make this and it failed because I did this or because of that or whatever it may be, all right? So that's the second thing. The third thing I want to say, and this is very, very, very important, boys. So look at me. Be careful, all right? We're going to be working with some very hot liquids, with some sharp knives in some cases, and I don't want you boys to get hurt. That's why I have asked your parents to help you. Do not do this alone. You are not allowed to do it alone. I want an adult in the room with you, okay? And if for whatever reason, over the next 2 weeks, your parents are unable to help you, and you're unable to do the assignment, then just get your parents to write me an email or send me a message. But it is very important they're in the room with you. Okay, this is to keep you safe. Okay, other than that, boys, those are the three most important things starting out. The recipe is going to start in a minute. Have a fantastic time, okay? Try and enjoy it. Try and see what's fun about it. Maybe you'll figure out you like cooking. If not that, I'm sure you like sugar and chocolate, okay? We're going to make honeycomb quickly, so I just want to quickly make sure before we start, we have everything we need, okay? You don't want, this isn't a recipe where you can let it sit in the stove for a while while you run off and get everything. So I'm going to make sure I've got everything. I've got my 100 grams of sugar, which if you don't have a scale is around about 175 milliliters in a cup, if you want to measure it that way, if it's white granulated like this. My bicarbonate of soda and my golden syrup. Okay, now what I'm going to do with the bicarbonate of soda is I'm going to measure it out before, okay, because when it comes to putting the bicarb or bicarbonate of soda into the mixture, it's at a very delicate place that if you're busy too long trying to get the spoon ready, you're going to burn your mixture, okay? So it's best to take it and measure out a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. And this is also the part that you don't want to get wrong, okay? You want to make sure you've got that teaspoon, not too much there and not too little, okay? What you've also got to get ready early is your wax paper on your baking tray, okay? You won't have time to get that ready later. All right, and that's about it. So let's get going. Now is we're going to take the 100 grams of, not the 100 grams, yes, 100 grams of sugar, toss it in there, and then we're going to take 3 tablespoons of golden syrup, okay? Okay, boys, so I'm switching to voiceover here so that you don't have to hear all the rubbish I've spoken this time. And also, I'm fast forwarding this so we can get through it a bit faster. So what you need to be doing in this process is trying to mix in the syrup and the sugar at a very low heat. And then once it's somewhat evenly mixed in or mostly mixed in, like it is now, you can turn up the temperature to a slightly higher heat, okay? But remember, keep the temperature low and constantly stirring, okay, boys? This is a really tricky recipe to get right, and you can burn it so very easily. And that is actually why we have syrup with sugar. It's not just straight sugar. The reason we have syrup and sugar together is syrup has a lot of water in it.
And as we heat up the mixture we've just created, the water is going to be heated up first. And when it starts to get to 100 degrees Celsius, it's going to start evaporating. And we want that. We want that water to evaporate out. But the reason we want it there at first is because we want the syrup to slowly warm up. We don't want it to, not the syrup, we don't want the sugar to shoot up, because sugar burns very easily because it does not heat evenly. So we have this water all around these sugar particles, and this water is slowly heating up the sugar as it evaporates. And as it evaporates, we're getting closer and closer to the heat we want, because the sugar, while it's evaporating, won't let the mixture exceed 100 degrees Celsius, because that's the boiling point of liquid. But once all of it's gone, then the mixture is going to shoot up in temperature very quickly. So to do that, to prevent it from burning and getting too hot, as you can see there was a bit of smoke, we have to keep a little bit of moisture, a little bit of water in while we're stirring this and trying to get that heat evenly across the entire mixture. All right, fantastic. So just remember, keep stirring, boys. Keep it up. Okay, so this is what the syrup should look like after a few minutes. You've got to keep stirring it. You'll start to notice that the sugar granules will start to dissolve, but you've got to keep going until you can feel no more solid pieces. It should all be a liquid. All right, great.
All right, boys, so we're getting pretty close now, okay? I'm going to add the bicarb in a few seconds, but I want to just let it heat up a little bit more. But what you can see here, as I'll try and bring it closer to the camera, is a whole lot of these little clear bubbles are coming up. And the other thing we look for is we want all those sugar granules to be dissolved, okay? Because if those sugar granules don't dissolve, when the honeycomb is made, those sugar granules are actually quite gross to feel in your mouth, okay? They're a little hard and crunchy, and we don't want that. We want the honeycomb to feel smooth when it breaks apart in our mouth. Okay, so what we're going to do in a few seconds, I want it to bubble up quite a bit, but not turn too brown. When I add the bicarbonate of soda, I actually want to tell you what happens there, okay? So the heat of the sugar, when the bicarb hits it, so bicarbonate of soda is actually a chemical known as sodium hydrogen carbon. I've completely gone blank now, boys. Okay. Anyway, it's a chemical made of sodium, hydrogen, oxygen molecules, and carbon molecules. And when it hits this, the sugar in this, the hot sugar, the heat from the sugar transfers to the bicarb and actually produces a whole lot of carbon dioxide gas. And that carbon dioxide gas bubbles off, okay? But as it bubbles off, it gets trapped in the sugar and in the syrup, and they form bubbles around it. So let's take a look here as we stir it in. Okay, there we go. It's reacting. So that white foaming is because carbon dioxide is being foamed up, okay? I'm turning off the heat now. Got to be careful. You can see it's smoking quite a bit. So now it's do or die. Okay, I'm transferring it over.
This is the color you boys should be looking for in your honeycomb. Okay, now let it set and solidify.
So here's the honeycomb. I've left it to solidify overnight. So what happened was, as it cooled down, it reached what we would call its freezing point, and it froze back into a solid. Okay, I know this doesn't seem like frozen because we normally think of frozen as cold, but this is cold for sugar. So we need to break this up into bite-sized pieces so we can dip it into chocolate more easily. To do that, we just take a knife, we put the point of the knife in, and we just bang down. And it should break off, and we can break it into smaller pieces like that. Cool. Please be careful with this, boys. I feel like I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. It's a knife. Be careful. So now we're going to make our dipping chocolate for the honeycomb. So what we're going to need is chocolate, wax paper ready, a bowl, a pot filled halfway with hot water, and shortening. Okay, now shortening is anything that, any fat that is solid at room temperature. So you can use butter, margarine. I'm using coconut oil because it is solid at room temperature. You can use vegetable and cooking oil that's liquid, but I don't recommend it, okay? We want something that's solid at room temperature because when this chocolate and shortening cools down, we want it to, when it gets cold enough, we want it to basically freeze, turn back into a solid. And if the shortening we're using is liquid at room temperature, then when it gets to that temperature, it's not going to solidify as nicely. It's not going to turn into a solid as nicely. It's going to stay in its liquid state. Okay, now, grade 7s, we've learned about boiling point. And that's why we have a double boiler here. So what's happening is we've got water in here, and we're going to boil this water. And when this water boils, it's going to boil at 100 degrees Celsius. And the steam is going to evaporate off the water. And as it evaporates off, that steam is going to be about 100 degrees Celsius. And as it rises, it's going to stay either at 100, just above or just below 100 degrees Celsius, okay? Because we can't make this liquid water hotter than 100 degrees. Because when it reaches 100, it evaporates. Water doesn't get hotter than 100 degrees. Liquid water doesn't. And the reason we're doing this is chocolate is so sensitive to heat that we want to make sure we never exceed 100 degrees Celsius. So we make sure we're boiling water, and the heat from the water is transferring to the bowl. Okay, and this can only be 100 degrees Celsius. So the bowl will only be at 100 degrees Celsius. One more thing I want to mention is we need to be very, very careful that we keep all the water we can out of this mixture. Okay, melted chocolate hates water. Okay, melted chocolate has 0 water in it. When it melts down, it's made up of cocoa butter, which is a fat, with a whole lot of these dry cocoa particles in there. But as soon as water gets in, it's going to clump up, and it's going to do this thing called seizing. Okay, we may notice it later, but it's not nice. It makes the chocolate all grainy. It's not smooth, and it doesn't dip well. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing now. Okay, so right here we have our chocolate pieces and our shortening, and I've got the water at a simmer. Okay, not boiling, at a simmer. I don't want the water to boil too quickly, because then it is going to heat up the bowl quite quickly. All right, remember, with this we just want to keep the temperature as low as possible. And what you'll see is it starts to melt at the bottom, and you just got to keep stirring it. Keep stirring all of this around. Okay, so keep it at a simmer, keep stirring it. Okay, so what you should see here, boys, is that the chocolate has become nice and smooth. And I've kept it at a low temperature. In fact, I turn it off now and then just to make sure it doesn't get too hot, okay? We're trying to protect the chocolate. Now, what I'm going to do is with the honeycomb, I'm not going to dip it. In fact, I'm going to pour the chocolate over it and let the excess chocolate drip off. The reason I'm doing this is dipping can often get a lot of the moisture from the honeycomb into the chocolate, which causes it to seize, and we don't want that. And this way it also saves chocolate, so I can cover more honeycomb. And the way I'm doing it is I'm just dipping, covering the top half, and the bottom half is going to be open, because that's the part I'm gripping. If you guys have tongs, tweezers, or something you can grab it with, that's fantastic. And now I just transfer it over to the wax paper. There we go. So this is my honeycomb once I've dipped it. You can see at the top there the honeycomb that was left over the last few pieces. I just dumped in the bowl and sort of scraped up the last little bit of chocolate. Alright, hope yours went well, boys. This is definitely a tricky recipe, so if you got it right, give yourself a good pat on the back. Alright, have a good day.